What's going on, everybody? Justin here with Everything Aquarium, back with another amazing aquarium video, of course. Today's video is going to be all about starting your first tank, as in, beginner level style tank. So if you guys are experts, you already know what to do, you already know everything you need, so you can skip this video if you'd like, or stay tuned just to brush up on some information. I by no means am an expert, of course, on anything, but I definitely know my aquariums and know most of my stuff, so I should be able to help you out a little bit. So if you're interested in learning about aquariums and what you should do to start up your own and the best way to do things, stay tuned. Alright guys, so without further ado, let's talk about a couple things real fast. First thing we're going to go over is really tank size, what you're going to want to use equipment wise, what type of chemicals you want to start with, and stocking, stuff like that. I'm not going to show you exactly what to do with setting up a tank. It's not going to be a physical setup because I really have nothing to set up right now. I have an empty 75 gallon which couldn't be set up, but I don't have the equipment to do that right now, so that'll be for a later video. But we can still talk about it. I can point everything out to you and show you the stuff that you'll need to get going. So to start things off with this video, we're going to start over here at my 6.8 gallon Imaginarium cube. This tank is highly modified in the sense that I removed all the built-in filtration. So you can kind of disregard that in a sense if you were to buy this exact tank, because you would have your built-in filtration already ready to go. In my sense, like I said, it is removed, so I have other apparatuses and setups here going. So let's talk about tank size to start. So tank size, that's your number one priority when finding a tank. First off, you got to think about, in my opinion, is room. How much space do you have? What can you use, and what can you have? What do you have to make room for? You got to think about that, because this is going to be a long-term thing most of the time. It's not very easy to take back down once you have it set up completely, especially if it's established. You don't want to take it down too much, or you don't want to necessarily take it down if it's established, if that makes sense. Unless, of course, you decide you want to get out of the hobby, and I don't recommend that for anybody because it's a great hobby. So anyway, a great beginner's tank would be anywhere from, I'd say, 10 gallon to 29 gallon standard. Between that, ideally, I think everybody should start with a 20 gallon long, just because it's the perfect length and the perfect width. You don't need height when it comes to a tank. You want that width and that length. More surface area, the better. And with the 20 gallon, you get a best of both worlds. You get a nice width and you get a nice length on tank length, I guess you should say. And with that, you get a lot of surface, which is good for oxygen exchange and whatnot. You don't necessarily need that height unless you're doing a breed-specific tank or a species-specific tank that requires something like that. But that's for more intermediate levels, and we'll save that for another day. I don't have any 20 longs to show you exactly what I mean, but this is going to be good enough to show you all the equipment. So after you choose your tank, your 20 long being that it's not too small, not too big to handle. If you get too small of a tank, it can be tough with water parameters at times, which if you don't know your nitrogen cycle, definitely learn that. I'll teach you a little bit about it in this video. But it's a lot harder to maintain parameters in a small tank because you have to make very minor adjustments in order to correct things. A bigger tank, you can make adjustments, and if you do a little bit too big of an adjustment, it's not going to hurt it because you have a lot of water to buffer that adjustment, if that makes sense. So if you add too much of one chemical on accident, it's not going to destroy a whole tank or shut down a whole tank because there's a lot of water, so you have a lot of room to play with there. That's the reason for wanting to have a bigger tank than a smaller tank. And the reason, obviously, not being having too big of a tank would be it's hard to maintain. You got to go through a lot of water. You have to have bigger equipment, more high-end equipment. The bigger the tank, the more it's going to cost, essentially. Unless you're running sponge filters, that's another discussion for later, but we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Sponge filter is probably the cheapest way to go for filtration. So yeah, next we'll talk about filtration, but I want to say one more thing about tanks. Your first tank, you should probably start with a framed tank, which is something more like this 75 gallon here, which is empty currently, needs to be set up. But this has a frame on it. It's a little bit more user-friendly because it's a little bit more rigid, I guess you could call it, a little bit more rugged. And you don't have to have any type of self-leveling mat necessarily. It's not required. I use them on all my tanks just because I go overkill on everything. But a nice framed tank is great. So once you have your framed 20 gallon tank, we'll base everything off that. Your 20 gallon long frame tank, you're going to want to first get that, you know, established and everything, get where you're going to buy it from, whether it be your local pet store or online. I find local pet stores always have great deals. You can usually find $1 per gallon sale on those. And once you get that, you can start looking at filtration, and we'll talk about that now. You have a couple different options for filtration, such as this AquaClear hang on the back. Doesn't have to be this specific brand, but if I'm going to recommend a good setup, you're going to definitely want to go with an AquaClear as your first filter. There's lots of different combinations of stuff you could add, but it'll usually come with a sponge filter, some activated carbon if I'm not wrong. I think it still comes with that, and then some biomedia, which is this stuff here. That's essential to having a good thriving tank because you want that beneficial bacteria on there, and that's all part of the nitrogen cycle. Once you get that going, or bought, or whatever you're going to do, however you decide you're going to buy it online or in store, you're going to want to buy some type of quick start, which is going to help that nitrogen cycle get up and running faster, and that way you can almost add fish immediately. I always recommend waiting at least 2 weeks before adding fish, no matter what type of chemical you treat with or whatever type of quick start you use. And once you add that chemical, that's going to get that filtration jumped up and running. That way you don't have that new tank syndrome, which is basically where you put your fish in, they produce ammonia, and there's no beneficial bacteria to absorb that ammonia, and your fish end up dying. Nobody wants to deal with that, so that's why you always have to do your research and use the right chemicals. I recommend Chem Stability to prevent that new tank syndrome, as it shows right on the bottle there. Like I said, that's going to up your beneficial bacteria count immediately, and you should be ready for fish in a couple weeks. Another type of filtration, which you see here in the back, is a sponge filter. That's very simple to use. All you need is an air pump with that, some air line, and possibly a check valve or a needle valve, whatever you want to use. But the bare minimum is the sponge filter, air line, and air pump. Then of course you also have canister filters, which is not really too big of a deal for a tank 20 gallons or less, or 30 gallons or less. You can definitely get away with hang on the backs and sponge filters. Your cheapest way is to go with a sponge filter. Your mid-entry level will definitely be a hang on the back, and then if you're wanting to get a little bit more extreme with things, you can do a canister filter or possibly even a sump, which that's going to be a whole nother video because that's all pretty much custom stuff. When it comes to a sump on a small tank like that, you'll have to get drilled. You'll have to either get that or some overflows put into it. It's a whole nother story. So just stick with something basic. You don't need to go overkill on your first tank. It's going to be your first time. You're probably going to lose some fish. You're going to have a tank crash possibly. So again, just do your research. Stay on the entry level side, but don't go cheap, if that makes sense. Definitely up your filtration as much as you can, because that's going to be your lifesaver, and they last a long time. So go with the better option when it comes to filtration. Second off, depending on what type of fish you're going to keep, which is most fish, you're going to want to get an aquarium heater, which is back there. This is an adjustable heater, that meaning I can adjust the temperature all the way down from, I think this one goes from like 65 to 85 degrees or something like that. And you're going to want to get that based on wattage, and you can figure that out on the package. It'll usually tell you, 50 watts per so many gallons, or so on and so forth. Depending on the manufacturer, it may all be different. So look at the back of the packaging when you decide to get a heater. I personally like the Aacclimation Jaeger, or Aacclimation Jaeger. I'm not exactly sure how you say it. Those are my favorite heaters currently, and this one actually is a Aqua Top, I'm pretty sure it's called, which is another good heater. I like those. Check with your local pet store, of course, see what they recommend. You may have a better one in your area that's going to work out for you better than ordering one online. So again, check with them, see what they have to say. Again, most fish are going to require a heater, but not every fish. You can get away with some type of cooler water fish. Again, you're going to have to do your research on that. Most tropical fish are tropical fish, meaning they're going to need a warmer temperature and a warmer climate at all times. But again, always do your research. There's things you can get away with. Certain goldfish and stuff you can have without a heater. And if you're thinking about getting a beta, a lot of people think about that as first fish. Please get a heater, and please get a tank that's at least 5 gallons in size. Just wanted to throw that out there for everybody. Let's talk about tank decor. Really, decor is completely up to you. Just as long as you're getting stuff that's aquarium approved, and you're not going outside and finding gravel and putting it in your fish tank where you could possibly introduce different diseases and stuff like that. Make sure you find stuff that's approved for your aquarium. And if I have to say so about decor, I would include definitely going with some type of real wood and live plants if you can. These plants, such as the Anubias here and the Anubias caufifolia, are great plants because they can float, or they can be strapped to wood or glued to wood or tied, however you want to do it. They don't have to be buried in any type of substrate, and they'll thrive with very low lighting and no type of fertilizer if you decide to go that route. Substrate wise, which in the fish world we call substrate, like basically is gravel or sand or some type of plant worthy substrate, is, you know, they have the fluval stratum, which is a really good one. Seachem makes a bunch of different good options. We'll save that for another video as well. We're just trying to keep things basic here. So a good gravel or a good type of sand would be great for a tank that you're just starting to work with. And now we'll move on to lighting. Depending if you have plants or not, you may want to get a specific light. These are some Hygger lights from Amazon that are good for plants. Any bright light will grow things, which includes algae, so you have to set your timers and stuff like that if you get one that has that capability. But with a tank that has no plants, you really don't have to leave the lights on at all unless you're ready to look at the fish. And that's kind of my rule of thumb to keep your algae levels down, is to only turn the lights on when you're looking at the fish if you have no live plants in there. The fish don't require light. They'll be just fine without it throughout the day. Just give them light every now and then so things can brighten up. And you know, fish do also need some nutrients from lights, I'm sure. I'm not a scientist, but they may need vitamin D, who knows. I can't say that for sure or not. Sounds kind of silly even saying that, but definitely I recommend getting a light, of course, for viewing reasons, and if you have a plant, it's necessary for that photosynthesis to occur for plants to grow, obviously. Another important thing I've forgotten to mention is a top. A lot of tops nowadays are glass like this with a separate light, or most of the time if you get a kit, you can find a built-in hood that comes with the kit that has a built-in light, which is also nice. It's kind of a 2-for-1, but the downside is you can't really see through the top. You'd have to open up the lid every time to feed, whereas this glass one has a feeding slot, or a lot of other glass canopies have hinges where they can just be lifted open as well, and you can see down in there the whole time. It lets light through. If you want to use aftermarket lights, which I always do on my tanks, I always go with a glass canopy and a separate light, and in my opinion that works a lot better in case the light burns out. I don't have to get a whole new hood to fit that light, and I can change up canopies if I want at any time, change up lights that I want anytime, and they don't ever have to fit together like that hood and light combo will have to fit perfectly. So after that is all said and done and you have all your equipment selected, you have everything in your cart, and you're ready to walk out the door, there's one thing that you cannot forget that is absolutely 100% necessary item. And no, I don't mean fish food, because that should be obvious. You should include fish food anytime you're setting up a new tank. Fish do need to eat, believe it or not. But what I'm talking about is a type of water conditioner. I use Fritz Complete, which I actually did a review on not too long ago if you want to check that out. It's a tried and true product that I've used over and over, and it works great. What water conditioner is basically a chemical that removes chlorine, chloramines, and harmful toxic metals, heavy metals from your water. Anytime you put water from a sink into a fish tank, it has to be treated with this, no matter whether you live on a well, if you have city water, or you know, if you get your water out of a lake. It doesn't matter where you get it from. Please don't get water from your lake and put it in your fish tank. Any water you put in your tank has to be treated by some type of water conditioner. If you put untreated water in there, chances are it's going to have chlorine, it's going to kill the fish, it's going to kill all of your live bacteria, and you can't be mad at that because that's what it's made to do. Chlorine is made to kill bacteria. If you have no bacteria, it's going to kill things. So it's kind of weird how it works. Usually bacteria is bad, but in the fish tank world, good bacteria is good, and that's what we want. That's what our Seachem stability is for. Now, not using that water conditioner is going to totally make this go to waste. As soon as you add that stuff and add chlorine into things, it's going to kill everything. So once you get that set up, you're going to also probably want to get some type of thermometer where you can set the temperature of the water coming out of the tap going into the tank to your correct temperature. It's always usually that way. That way your heater doesn't have to run longer. You don't want to put 60-degree water in there and then have your heater bring it up to 76 degrees. That's just a lot of work for the heater. If you can set your water close to that 76, 77, 78 degrees when the temperature of the water going into the tank, that heater's going to have to work less, and it's going to prolong the life of it and therefore save you money and save you time and headache and all that. I moved over here to my 40-gallon breeder just for a change of scene so the video doesn't get too boring. Here I have some common cichlids that you guys probably haven't heard of because I haven't talked too much about them, but they're topaz cichlids and some multihero, or excuse me, I'm not sure what those guys chemical or chemical. Scientific names are right now. Remind me in the comments below, because I know it, I just can't think of it. But anyways, going forth with that, once you get your temperature to the temperature of the water to the right setting, you're going to want to put in your tank, of course, add your live bacteria, which is that sea chem stability, and of course your water conditioner. You're always going to want to condition your water before you add that chemical, that live bacteria first, because again, if you put chlorine in there with that live bacteria, it's going to kill it, and it'll be worthless, and you'll have wasted money. So once you got your tank set up and everything going, I wanted to also mention too, when you get your filter media and unbox it and all that stuff, which is the stuff that you put inside your filter, whether it be a cartridge or anything like that, you're going to always want to rinse that out with some clean fresh water, just to remove all dust particles and such on and so forth. After you get that set up, you're going to dechlorinate your water while it's in the tank or as it goes in, however way you can do it, just as long as you have that chlorinated water dechlorinated with that chemical. Before you do anything else, before you add fish and all that, then you will be perfectly fine. It's not going to hurt any of the equipment if you have chlorine in it, but it will hurt anything that is live. So as long as you got that water dechlorinated before you add any type of live bacteria or fish, like I've said 50 times now, you'll be perfectly fine. So once everything is up and running and you decide to add your sea chem stability or whatever type of live nitrifying bacteria that you add, you're going to want to let that tank run for at least a period of 2 weeks. And what that's going to do is it's going to introduce that bacteria. It's going to give them time to get into media such as these sponge filters here, or through my intake tube down into my canister filter down there, and let that bacteria find somewhere to live, find somewhere to attach to. Bacteria doesn't do well floating in a water column, so you got to give it time to find things to grab onto and to spread and grow and colonize. And once they get established in that filter media, that's when you're going to be ready to add fish. And like I said before, give that about 2 weeks and then you should be good to go. After you decided to add all your chemicals and everything's ready to go, during that 2-week period, you're going to eventually want to go get some type of water test kit. I can personally recommend the API Freshwater Master Test Kit as my #1 option, just because it has all your tests you're going to need. It's going to have your pH, your high range pH, your ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate. Your biggest things are going to be your ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate. Especially when a tank is first starting, your ammonia is going to be your #1 thing you're going to want to watch, because if that gets too high, you know something's wrong, and then you'll therefore have to change the water. But within that first 2 weeks, that's the key. You're going to not want to change that water within the first 2 weeks. You're going to want to let that tank play out and test accordingly. As long as that ammonia is going down as the days go on, after that 2 weeks, you're going to test it, like I said, as long as that ammonia is going down, everything should be good. You should have bare minimum nitrates and bare minimum nitrites. That's going to get that nitrogen cycle going. As long as you can see nitrate, your tank is pretty much getting cycled, and you should be therefore ready to add fish, as long as your ammonia levels are low and your nitrites should be close to 0. You're always going to have a little bit of nitrate unless you drain your water out completely and add it all the way back up. But nitrate is good in a way, as a sense that it's telling you your tank has been cycled and your bacteria are properly breaking down that ammonia to the nitrite to the nitrate. Nitrate is the least toxic out of those three. Ammonia being your most toxic, that'll kill fish immediately. So I just wanted to throw that in there about that water test kit. Definitely a necessity, but it's not, I guess, 100% necessary as long as you wait out your time. So after that long awaited 2 weeks and all that's set up, you're finally ready to add your fish. If, of course, your nitrates and stuff are in line and your ammonia level is in line, you'll be ready to add fish. Then you'll need to go up to one of your local pet stores, or if you want to order fish, that's fine. I definitely recommend just going to your local fish store to get started. It's a lot easier that way. You can handpick the fish you'd like. You can ask employees information about the fish to make sure you're getting the right option for you. Most of these fish in here are not beginner-friendly fish. One, because they're not very cost-effective in the sense that they are a little bit more pricey. They can be a little bit more picky, and they can be aggressive. Something in this tank that is a little bit more user-friendly for a beginner would be these Colombian red and blue tetras. These guys are pretty basic. They're pretty simple to care for. You're going to already have everything you need for them, in the sense that you got the right fish food as well, some type of tropical fish food, and proper heating. Then you'll be good to care for these guys. A small school will fit in a 20-gallon fine. As they do get bigger, they will require a larger tank, but they should work out well. I'd say more than 90% of the time I've had good luck with these guys. I only have a school of 7 in a 55-gallon tank. That's because I also have extra fish in here that I don't need to have in here right now that are getting moved eventually. But these guys here will work great. I'd say a school like 5 to 8 would be great in a 20 gallon. That might be a little bit of overkill, but just as long as you got one of those good AquaClear filtration systems on the back there, you should be good. So fish acclimation is another thing that I wanted to talk about real fast. And I have lots of videos in depth on how to do this that I'll leave down in the description, or possibly put a card up on how to view that, so you guys can get more information on it. But basically, in a short, the way you're going to want to acclimate your fish is when you get them in a bag from the pet store. They're going to give them to you in a tight bag that's either rubber band or tied up. And the first thing you're going to want to do is check your aquarium temperature water if you can. Make sure it's where you want it. Set the bag in the water, tied up, let it float for about 15 to 20 minutes, just that way, so that way the water temperatures matches. Not going to worry too much about parameters matching, which is, you know, pH, all that stuff, because these are pretty basic fish and they're hardy and they'll do well in any environment, just as long as it's suitable. So after you float those guys for that 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes possibly, just give them a bare minimum of at least 15 to 20 minutes, I would say. You're going to want to get some type of net and dump the water out into the net, all the fish into the net. Do not put the tank water in that aquarium bag that you get from the pet store into your tank, because you can introduce some type of bacteria that you don't have in that tank and therefore cause them an outbreak, possibly injure other fish if they have it in there, cause them to get sick, and you never want to do that. So never introduce another aquarium's tank water into your aquarium tank water. So like I said, open that bag, dump those guys out into a net, let that excess water go into a bucket below that net. Take the net, cup it so you don't drop any fish or have any fish flop out, and then slowly introduce them into the tank, letting them swim out on their own. That's the best way to add fish to a new aquarium. After you get those guys settled into your new aquarium, what I can recommend, and what has worked good for me, is turning off the light immediately, trying to get the tank pretty much dark while those fish adjust. It's going to cause a little bit less stress. Let those guys find their hiding spots that they feel comfortable in, and let them come out. Don't mess with the tank. Don't bother them for quite a while. Give them, 12 hours to adjust completely to come out, and before you even try to feed or anything like that, just so they can get comfortable with their surroundings, figure out where they're at, because it's a new world. Imagine you got picked up and moved somewhere completely new and you had no idea where you were. You'd probably be pretty nervous. That's how your fish are. They got to come out, they got to get adjusted, they got to make acquaintances. If you already have fish in there, they got to make friends with those guys, or at least get to know everybody before they decide to come out and swim around like this here. These guys have been here for quite a while, so as you can see, they're quite reactive to me. They'll come up to my hand, and hopefully your fish will be like that too. As long as you give them the time and the proper introduction, these guys will be just as outgoing as yours. So after those guys are introduced, you waited that 12-hour period or so. Wake up the next morning, you can check on your fish, make sure everybody's doing well, possibly give them their first serving of food. A very light serving, of course, because you don't want to completely overload that live nitrifying bacteria in there with a bunch of food and waste. Or you could possibly have an ammonia spike, which leads to fish death. And that's where a lot of people get mixed up. You don't want to feed a bunch right away. I want to reiterate that. You do not want to feed a lot of food your very first time. You're going to shock that tank, possibly have a lot of fish that don't even eat, because they could still be settling in. So you're going to want to pay attention, make sure those fish are eating. If they're not eating food, quit adding food, wait some more time, possibly remove that old food that you had just put in there if you could, to remove that excess ammonia, or possibly what am I trying to say? Remove the excess fish food, that way it does not create ammonia, therefore causing a spike in your tank. That way you can have all your fish thrive. Give them some more time, come back the next day, feed them again if they don't eat. Check your water parameters, so on and so forth. They may be sick. Go through with your local pet store, see if they've had any illness in there with those fish. You can call them, and if anything goes wrong with them, you can bring them back and they'll give you a refund, depending on what your fish store is. But most of the time you'll have good luck. Those fish will eat, they'll thrive, and you'll be right at your 2-week marker, like I said. So check your tank parameters again, meaning test your water, and do that every week just to make sure everything's going good. If you notice any sign of fatigue or fish illness, anything like that, always check your water. Do a water change if you can, which means you're sucking out old water, putting fresh chlorinated or dechlorinated water in, meaning you've treated that water. Of course, again, never add tap water directly from your sink into your fish tank unless it has been treated with a proper dechlorinator. I know I'm kind of all over the place with this video, guys, so don't get on me too much. I'm a little bit all over the place all the time with my videos here, so just take what you can from this video, and I hope that you can have a enjoyable experience with your first tank setup and go up from there. Continue to do your research. Always ask questions. Start your own YouTube channel if you want. Everybody would be happy to follow along with your journey. I know you guys have for mine, and it's been a great time having you guys all here, and I love to be able to talk to you guys and show you guys new things like this. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, leave a like, comment in the description down below, and again guys, thanks for watching. There's more videos to come, and one more thing before I go. Always dechlorinate your water before you put it in your aquarium using a proper aquarium dechlorinator. For the last time. Thanks guys for watching. We'll see you later.